chapter 26. Okay, so we have, last time we had Jacob and Esau. Esau sells his birthright to Jacob. And now we have God's promise now that and you see God doing this through Abraham, through Isaac, through Jacob. This continuous reaffirming and renewal of the promise. This will sound very familiar. Now there was a famine in the land besides the former famine. Did we actually read chapter 26 already?
I don't know.
I think so, because I'm on chapter
Yeah,
27.
yeah, we did. We did read. Sorry, yeah. So I just wanted to point out chapter 26. What's kind of funny is when you get to where Isaac does the same thing that Abraham did, saying that Rebekah is his sister, which was just a straight out lie, because Sarah was actually Abraham's half-sister. Rebekah is not his sister at all. So he flat out lies. But note the place and the name, Gerar and Abimelech. Same guy. Exactly the same guy that Abraham pulled the same thing on in years before. This is the same guy. So like 20 years before this, meanwhile, Abimelech, still king in Gerar, and you'd think that he'd say, wait, you're Abraham's son? I'm not falling for this one again, but he did. Yep. Okay. Actually,
I missed that.
well, he wasn't. He obviously was a little smarter, because remember, previously he just took Sarah. This time he saw, oh, she's my sister, and you almost wonder if he said, okay, let's find out. And so it says that he sees them in the garden. The euphemism being laughing with Rebekah, his wife, doing husband and wife things in the garden, and realizes that's not his sister. You almost wonder if he remembered, oh yeah, this is Abraham's son. Better make sure that this is actually his sister. And so he spies on him, perhaps. Might explain why he was like checking on him in the garden to see what was going on.
Were they afraid because the people in Sodom, because they knew people like Sodom were like that?
No, I don't think so. No, the fear was Abimelech by this point. Remember, when it happened before, and he, in ignorance, took Sarah because he wanted her to be his wife, and God afflicted Gerar with sores, and particularly Abimelech's household. And Abimelech returned Sarah when he discovered what was going on and blamed Abraham for lying. Notice he says to Isaac now, he says, what have you done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and then you would have brought guilt upon us, because he remembered what happened before, and it was the last thing he wanted. And so Abimelech said, here, take a bunch of stuff and leave. You're mightier even than we are. Okay, so anyway, then we continue on. He made a treaty with Abimelech. They made at this well. And then it cuts over to Esau. It speaks about how Esau took Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, to be his wife. Now, what do you notice about that? Isaac, or Jacob, took, or I'm sorry, not Isaac. So the son of, sorry, where are we going here? Isaac took Rebekah to be his wife of the kindred of Abraham, and now you have the children of Jacob, of Isaac, Jacob and Esau. We first hear about Esau's wife. He marries a Hittite woman. So there's already a very clear distinction. So before, we already saw that Esau did not have faith in the promise and counted it as worthless, and sold his birthright for a bowl of stew. And now we see Esau marrying a pagan woman of the tribes of Canaan, a Hittite. All right. And he also married a second Hittite, Basemeth. What happens? They made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. The parents of Esau were grieved that their son is marrying pagan women. Remember the evil things that the pagan tribes did. And they could see that they would just lead Esau into that same evil. Okay. Now on to Jacob's story. Continuing it anyway. When Isaac was old, and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow. Go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, and that my soul may bless you before I die." If you don't understand the customs of the day, you wouldn't understand the meaning of this. The blessing here is the blessing of the firstborn and the official handing over to him of the entire household. The problem is, Isaac should have known better. God had already declared that the elder will serve the younger, which means that God himself had declared that the one who came second out of the womb, just right after Esau, is the heir. He is the son of Isaac who would inherit. But Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob, even though he could see the path that Esau was taking, marrying pagan women. He loves his son. And the difference is Rebekah is grieved at what Esau has done, but Rebekah also remembers what the Lord said, that Jacob would be the heir. The elder would serve the younger. Jacob would receive the household. Jacob would become the ancestor of the Christ. But the way, of course, they go about attempting to fulfill this promise is evil, because they use deceit. Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die." And again, Rebekah recognizes that, oh, goodness, he's about to give the wrong son the inheritance against God's own pronouncement. Well, I got to step in and fix this. Who else is going to? Yes?
I always thought that she was doing evil.
Well, what she is doing it for the right reason, but she's doing evil indeed, because she's lying to her husband and having Jacob lie to his father. We do not have what's called, some people have called Jesuit casuistry, but you probably know it as the phrase, "the ends justify the means." Let us do evil that good may come, as people sometimes accuse Christians, that Paul refers to in the book of Romans. This is not how we behave as Christians. Does this mean that God cannot use the evil that we do and turn it to good? Well, he does it all the time. And so when you see even the saints doing evil things like this, it does not describe these things to justify the means that they used to do it. They should have trusted God, that God would fix the problem without having to lie to Isaac. Who knows what God would have done? He would have fulfilled his promise. God would keep his promise. But once again, because we do not trust God to keep his promise, we decide that we're going to step in and then we sin in the process. This is what Rebekah does.
On the other hand, what if God was using Rebekah to...
God used Rebekah, he did use Rebekah, but not in a way that justifies what Rebekah did. Okay, Rebekah did evil, and so did Jacob, by deceiving their father. The evil is not justified. What they did is sin. And so yes, God used their freely chosen sin, but he turned it to good, just like we have later in Joseph's story. You thought evil against me, but God meant it for good. Okay? It's still an evil thing. And yet God takes the evil that we willingly do and turns it to his good. You see examples of this all throughout the history of the Messianic line, even right down to which people were born through whom that ultimately led to Christ. And we always maintain people choose evil fully and freely of their own will so that they are the only ones to blame. And yet God, because he is God, is able to work the entire tapestry of the world in such a way that even the evil that men freely choose carries out his will. That's the way we need to view it. Not that God is the author of evil. There's a very fine and careful balance that you have to make. See, in Calvinism, they would go to the full extreme, many, not all, but many of them, to say God foreordained the evil itself, and that God is, in fact, the author of the evil. But Scripture does not say this. The evil is done by men of their own will. And yet God, by his almighty power, in the midst of all the evil that men do, still brings about his will. Okay, continue. Now Rebekah was listening, and we heard that. Okay. Bring me game and prepare it before I die, etc. So Rebekah recognizes he's about to give the blessing to the wrong son. So now she continues. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, that I may prepare for them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. They're not identical twins. They're fraternal twins. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. His mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son, and obey my voice and go and bring them to me. So on the one hand, you could say, well, Jacob was obeying his mother, and yet we do not obey earthly authorities who command us to sin. Okay. Potiphar's wife in Jacob's story was his authority. She was the mistress of the household. He was a servant in the household. She ordered him to lie with her, and he refused because it was sin. Same principle applies even in lesser sins, such as we see here. So Jacob went and took them, and he brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she took the skins of the young goats, and she put those on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. In other words, the parts that would be exposed. And she put the delicious food and bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went into his father and said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you found it so quickly? When you go out and hunt, it takes some time to find the game, the animals. He answered, because the Lord your God granted me success, invoking God's name in his lie. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near me that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not. Remember, Isaac is blind at this point. So Jacob went near Isaac his father, who felt him and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands, and so he blessed him. And he said, are you really my son Esau? He answered, I am. Then he said, bring it near to me, that I may eat my son's game and bless you. So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, come near and kiss me, my son. So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments, which were Esau's clothing. So he smelled like Esau, and he blessed him and said, see, the smell of my son is as the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let the peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. There is the messianic promise. The nations ultimately come under Christ's reign. That is all caught up in the promise made to Abraham. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you. Now the Jews, of course, love to point to this verse, as well as dispensational Christians point to this verse and say, that means we have to bless Israel no matter what they do. But we should know by now that the true Israel is the Israel of faith. God's people are the people of faith. Israel is not according to the flesh, but according to the promise, the faith that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the people that are cursed when they are cursed and blessed when they bless. And so that statement certainly applied to Israel until Israel abandoned the promise. But the true Israel, including many of the Jews, kept the faith, the promise. And these blessings, and cursings, and these eternal promises remain in effect all the way down through history. And even the promises that they will inherit the land forever are still in effect. Because when Christ puts all things under his feet, his true Israel, his people, inherit the land, literally, forever. Okay. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, then Esau his brother came in from his hunting, and also prepared delicious food, and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me. His father Isaac said to him, Who are you? And he answered, I am your son, your firstborn Esau. Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed. What do you see happening here? Esau comes in, Isaac realizes what happened, that it was Jacob and not Esau. And he remembers what God said. And he trembles violently. He concludes, yes, he indeed shall be blessed. The blessing, even though it was gained by false means, was still according to the will. The blessing was according to the will of the Lord. It is through Jacob that the seed would be named. He shall indeed be blessed. So, what you can see here is, even though Isaac himself had gone astray from the word that God had commanded, not that he lost faith, God still carries out his will. And Jacob and Isaac recognizes this. And his statement, yes, and he shall be blessed, is a statement of faith in the promise. Okay. As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, Bless me, even also my father. But he said, Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. And in fact, Esau had sold him the blessing already, because he cared nothing for it. But now when his father is dead, and he sees all of a sudden that he has nothing, he didn't care at all for the blessing before, now he does. Esau said, Is he not rightly named Jacob? Remember, the word is kind of a, he takes him by the heel, is an idiom for he cheats. So the phrase, he holds him by the heel in Hebrew is like a figure of speech for you're a cheater. Okay. Is he now rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, Have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered and said to Esau, Behold, I have made him lord over you and all his brothers, and I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. We're not told about the other children of Isaac and Rebekah, but there were other children. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac his father answered and said, Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. So, you will serve. This is the blessing. You will indeed serve your brother, but not forever. You will break his yoke. So, the descendant of Esau is the nation of the Edomites. And that's exactly what happened. They were a nation that was in the south of Palestine, of the land of Canaan. Because when Jacob and his sons went to Egypt, Esau remained, and he became a nation. And then what happens when the Israelites are coming up and they're ready to enter the promised land after the 40 years in the wilderness? They come to Edom, the Edomites, and they said, "We just want to go through. We're not going to touch any of your food. We're not going to touch your wells. And if anybody does, we'll pay for everything. We just want to go through and go north." And they refused, and they went around. And so Edom was no longer subject to Jacob. They had broken that yoke, according to this very promise and prophecy of Isaac.
So it's interesting, in the King James Version, verse 39 is the opposite of what you read. It says, Behold, your dwelling shall be of the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above.
Behold, thy dwelling shall be
Interesting,
fatness of
yeah.
the earth and the dew of heaven.
Well, this is the problem with properly translating prepositions from foreign languages. It can be difficult. And I have to verify, but I can pretty much guarantee you that the Septuagint would agree with this reading of it. That if you were to look at the Septuagint, you would see that the way they translated the prepositions, prepositions. The way they translated the prepositions. The problem is think of the word from. The preposition from, even in English, is ambiguous. So, your dwelling will be from the fatness of the earth. Well, from means away from, or it means you're getting it from. It has a dual meaning. And sometimes you have the same thing that can happen in Hebrew. In the context, of course, the whole context, it's pretty clear.
It makes a lot more sense. It's a
Correct.
Right.
It says, what it's describing in verse 39 is you're going to settle down and you're going to farm. But what does 40 say? No, you're going to be a wanderer and you're going to live by the sword. You're not going to settle down and farm. You're going to get your living by the sword.
Right.
So they're opposites. So context is always key. All right. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her son, were told to Rebekah. So somebody overheard Esau saying these things, muttering to himself or whatever. They told Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while until your brother's fury turns away. Until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of you both in one day? Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of those Hittite women, the daughters of Heth, Hittite. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? And so, sending Jacob to Laban has a dual purpose. Remember, so Laban was the younger man at the time that Abraham's servant went to that household to find a wife for Isaac. And now we see Jacob and Esau are grown, Isaac has grown, Laban is now an older man with a huge household of his own. He's the inheritor of that household that Rebekah originally came from. It's her brother.
Yeah.
Right? And so she wants one of the kindred, just like Abram wanted for Isaac, so Rebekah wants for Jacob. So not only by fleeing to Laban would he be safe from his brother Esau, he'd also find a wife while he is there. And he did. Not just one, but 4. All right. Stop there and pick up next time.